The Decline of the First. The epic poems and depictions of the Advex Mors campaign were spread across the Imperium by the remembrances that had accompanied the fleet. The First Legion had taken one of the direst threats to emerge from beyond the borders of the Imperium head-on in their place of power and crushed them utterly and without mercy, leaving no stone upon stone. Yet it was but one great victory among 1,000 others, with each of the legions able to boast of achievements just as impressive. Their returned Primarchs forging legends that would resound across the galaxy for thousands of Terran years. Far from ending the strife within the Legion, the Battle of Advex Mors seemed only to deepen the malaise that gripped its heart, a sickness that sought to corrupt that once unparalleled force. Pride had taken hold of the warriors and masters of the Legion, and only blood would assuage its hunger. In the wake of the campaign at Advex Mors, the newly anointed Grand Master sought other badges of glory for his Legion. A dozen victories were claimed for the first, each more reckless than the last, and yet it was still considered nothing more than what was expected by the Divisio Militaris on distant Terra. Driven on by a hunger for glory that grew with each and every campaign honor, the Grand Master and his warriors arrived at the non-compliant stronghold of Carcassonne, a fortress world that had resisted Robert Guilliman and the storied ranks of his elite for almost a solar month. The patient warlord of the Ultramarines had set his strategies, intending to besiege the fortress in detail and save his legion the unwarranted casualties a foolhardy frontal assault would bring. The arrival of Grand Master Urian van Drake and his warriors did not change this strategy, and the Lord of Ultramar expected them to heed his counsel and join his camp. The warriors of the First, seeing before them a chance to humble the great Primarch, formed ranks before the great kilometers-high gates of the world fortress of Carcassonne and charged. A wedge of black-armored warriors and engines of war, 10,000 strong and preceded by the same great banners that had once gone to war at the side of the Emperor himself, descended upon the city-sized gatehouse. Hundreds fell in the initial assault, blasted apart by rampart cannon and immolated by plasma guards issued forth from hidden murder holes in the fortifications. They forced a breach at the cost of their own lives, opening a path for the heavy guns to burn a hole in the vast gates and into the maze of fortified boulevards beyond. His hand forced by the actions of the First, Guilliman and his own warriors advanced, but slowly, cautiously, taking each objective methodically and with minimal losses. The vanguard of the First Legion soon outpaced them, making for the central plaza and the citadel at its heart. Though they would reach it long before the Ultramarines, a final act of treachery by the desperate overlords of Carcassonne would undermine the First Legion's victory. A hidden atomic mine detonated under the keep's tower and killed the second Grand Master of the First Legion as he stood upon the threshold of triumph, burying both Van Drake and his lifeguard Carter from the host of death. Though their losses had been grievous, both in number and in significance, victory had been seized in the Legion's bloodied grasp, its savor all the more sweet for the price paid to earn it. Yet the Lord of Ultramar, his blue-clad warriors last to the battle and last to the victory, offered them no words of congratulations. The Primarch did not acknowledge the skills or the fortitude of the First Legion, gave no salute to their bravery or their fallen. Instead, he offered only these words to the battered ranks of the victorious First as they stood about the bodies of their fallen champions. Vainglory is a poor strategist, for he renders triumph a bitter trophy and an empty prize. Today, you have proven the strength of your legion, but not its wisdom. Along a knife's edge. It would be in death that Grandmaster Urian van Drake would finally achieve his aim, for it was the first stirrings of hate that would unite his legion, an animosity that was born with his death and festered in the ignominious victory of Carcassonne. That world was abandoned by the First Legion and left to the warriors of Ultramar, its battle honor excised from Legion records and marked on banners only by an empty laurel. The only thing that the Angels of Death would take with them from Carcassonne was a subtle taint, a lingering sense of ignominy that soured their conquests and achievements and drove them to even greater feats to prove their valor. For despite the deeds of their past and the victory at Carcassonne, the Ultramarines saw them simply as equals, brothers rather than mentors. To the First Legion, whom the Emperor had created first and kept close at his side, this seemed more of an insult than the harsh words of Robert Guilliman. Once more the Council of Masters took the reins of the First Legion, that most potent weapon of war, and split it across the stars to seek vindication in the most deadly contests of arms they could find, each eager to prove the worth of their legion and their host. They gave battle without remorse, and grasped at triumphs without regard for the cost attached to their trophies. The 9th and 14th chapters of the Legion took the coral citadels of Maelnock from the Fraal in a single night of brutal close-quarter slaughter, at a cost of 1/10 of their own strength, in order to outpace the onslaught of the Lunar Wolves elsewhere in the cluster. Upon the rust deserts of Vorsingan, a force of 1,000 initiates of the Host of Iron, gathered from 11 companies and crewing over 400 engines of war, took the field against a throng of brutish orcoid hulks over 3 times their number, running ahead of the main assault force to claim victory for themselves at a fearful price. Yet for each victory, each battle honor claimed by the blood of its warriors, the First Legion came no closer to regaining the glory of its inception. All across the galaxy, the Legiones Astartes had each become a unique weapon of war, having taken the doctrines of the Principia Bellicosa developed from the trials of the First Legion's campaigns and surpassed them, adapting them to their own needs. In the realm of Ultramar, the Grand Kingdom of the Ultramarines, forged by the hand of Guilliman, the Primarch of the 13th Legion, had gone so far as to pen a new treatise of war to improve upon the scheme by which the legions had organized themselves since they had left Terra. The golden age of the First Legion, those halcyon days when it had stood as sole guardian of the fledgling Imperium, had all but ended. The nature of those hidden battles meant they would live on only in the memories of the oldest warriors of the Legion, and in the secret histories of the Imperial archives, a bitter price to pay for the first of all the Emperor's legions that their own honor would ever hold their greatest achievements captive. Pride, which had sustained the Legion through all of the horrors of its past, all of its solitary crusade, valiant last stands, would not allow them to accept a lesser place in the Imperium's order of battle. Pride would see the Legion ground to dust before it would let the younger legions eclipse them. As the Great Crusade drew to its midpoint, the turning of the tide in the Emperor's war to conquer the galaxy, the First Legion stood at a precipice of their own. The years since the death of Grand Master Urian van Drake had seen them reduced in number, but not in spirit. Where the other legions had prospered and grown stronger, the Angels of Death had seen their power squandered in suicidal assaults and campaigns grueling beyond the ken of mortal soldiers. Those wars had cost them warriors and war engines, more perhaps than was wise, but had honed the fighting skills of its warriors to a keen but brittle edge. To their allies, they were grim death-seekers, ever searching for the mightiest foes against which to match their skills and never retreating from battle, even in the face of annihilation. Its leadership divided among the Council of Masters, and its warriors taken by a fever of battle lust. The Legion was spread across the galaxy and engaged in wars beyond count, each chapter, host, and order seeking to regain what had been lost. Had it continued down that path, it is likely that the First Legion would have fallen, slowly and inevitably cut to pieces on the double-edged blade of its pride. Yet this was not to be, for a small fleet of Jagatai Khan's roving hunters, White Scars, would discover a world known as Caliban, and the Emperor would bring forth from its dark forests the First Legion's salvation.